Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. I am back. I am back. I know it's been a little while, but sometimes you have to take a little bit of a break in order to get your shit together because me, if I'm not feeling 100% or even 70%, I just can't do it. And I want to give you guys the best shows possible with maximum energy and all this kind of stuff. So I needed to take a small break in order to just recalibrate things for a second and just kind of and now I'm back. So yeah, I am back. There you go. But this is gonna be a really good show, I think, because obviously we have the game to talk about. We have a little bit of transfer stuff to talk about. Um, and then my favorite thing is when, you know, you're online and you're seeing people talk about things and you just kind of have a feeling like they're not being super honest about a player or anything. And you question it and then everybody attacks you. And so we have to talk about Kai Havertz. I think that is a very interesting conversation because I always know when people are trying to protect, because even the slightest bit of deviating from the narrative of a certain part of the fan base, it gets you absolutely smacked up and beat down online. And so, I definitely want to chit chat about that because I feel like people are lying about Kai Havertz, and I think that that is a really interesting conversation and debate that we can have here on She Knows Arsenal, because this is what, not an echo chamber. On this channel, we can all have our own opinions. If I don't agree with you, I'm going to let you know. If you don't agree with me, you're going to let me know. And that's just how we do here on She Knows Arsenal. So yeah, there's about 40 of you guys in here already, which is amazing. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And you know, just to kind of start off with, I mean, we won another game, and after the Nottingham Forest game, I'm not going to lie, I was a little concerned about what I saw just because we won the game, but I'm always going to keep it absolutely 100 with you guys. Usually your first feeling on something is your true feeling, and then when you go online and stuff like that, you start to see what other people are saying, and then you start to change your opinion a little bit. And my instant reaction to the Nottingham Forest game was, I don't think this group of players together really works, and it doesn't really feel fluid, and the players are really connecting the way that they did last season. Now, we had new players in the team, which you can always take that into account. And you had players that were in the team playing in different positions, like Thomas Partey, right? So you always have to take that into consideration. But I will say that there are certain combinations that we just know are like oil and water. And one of those combinations for me has always been Eddie Nketiah plus Martinelli. And I think, even somebody like a Kai Havertz needs somebody in order to play off of a little bit. And Eddie doesn't necessarily give you that. So the front five slash front six felt very stiff and lacked fluidity. And that, how we were playing last season where everybody was switching positions and it was just the vibes, you see with your eyes, it's just not the same, right? No matter how you spin it, how you cook it, how you manipulate it, it's not the same, right? And so that concerned me a little bit because I'm I want to see what we were seeing last season, but I'm willing to give it time, obviously, because we know we have different players in the team, right? This game rolled around. I didn't necessarily expect changes. I expected pretty much the same team that started against Forest to start against Crystal Palace. But I was shocked to see Gabriel out of the lineup again. And I do think that, I'm somebody that, I think people want to believe what they want to believe. I think it's very odd that he's not starting games. I really want to just believe it's a tactical thing. But my heart of hearts is more teams are looking at him, and if we were to get a big bid, we would maybe accept it. So we're kind of playing the game a little bit, keeping him out of the lineup just in case, telling the media that he's definitely not for sale, but we know everybody has a price, you know? And so I didn't love that going into the Palace game because you kind of feel like a Monday night Palace game, Selhurst Park, under the lights is going to be physical and a little bit more demanding. And so you want somebody like Gabriel in the team. But I think having, Saliba and White for me is a good enough partnership. Like, I do think Ben White gets less credit than he deserves defensively. I think he is a very good defender. I'm used to seeing him on the right at right back, but he was good at center back. But yeah, not having Gabriel was a little bit of like are these the Saudi Arabian teams, are they really trying to come get him? What's going on? Like, what's happening? Because ultimately, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, if there's a list of players that I feel like we just can't live without, and I would be like an untransferable type of list, an untouchable list, Gabrielle is not on it, but at the end of the window, he's definitely on it because there's no way to replace him with anybody of that level or better in this at the end of the window. So it would be a very bad time to probably move him on or even look to do something like that. So the Gabrielle situation is a little funky. Like, it was a little funky, and you know me, I just don't be believing everything that people will be saying. Like, why is he on the bench? Like, it doesn't make any sense, you know? But the one thing that I will say is that if it's not transfer related, which it very well could not be transfer related, it could be tactical, really. What we do need to start getting used to is different partnerships back there. I think there's different like horses for courses, and you know, some games it will be better to have Saliba and Gabriel, and other games it'll be better to have Ben White and Saliba, because Gabriel, as much as I love him, he's not the best on the ball. Um, he's more of our like physical warrior type of player. He's not bad on the ball, but he's definitely not as good as Ben, right? And so I think like the formula is Saliba plus somebody. And so, it's either going to be Saliba plus Ben, Saliba plus Gabriel, Saliba plus Kivior. And if we're in like a difficult situation, then you start mixing up other pieces. But the Gabriel situation was freaking weird, especially like because it was like right before the game started. All these like rumors were coming out about the Saudi Arabian teams, and it was just hurting my head. Okay, it was just hurting my head. Let's see what you guys are saying. Arnolito says Saliba, Rice, and Saka are the only players that are irreplaceable. Yeah, I think I'm always like of the mind that there's a price for almost everybody. I think it would be naive to think that if like a Saudi Arabian team came in with 80 million, that we would not sell. But at this part of the window, it would be very stupid, I think, to move him on in any way. So yeah, Boy says when Pep is rotating Ake and Akanji and Ruben Diaz and Laporte, no one starts saying one of them is going to be sold. Laporte has now been sold, but I didn't hear any chatter like that last season. I think the reason why you don't hear that is because City historically, like since Pep has been there, have been stockpiling talent. And so, when City have depth, everybody's like, oh, that's so normal because they have all this money, and, Pep has to have all these options, right? Arsenal are in the very like infancy of building depth. And you guys know, like under Arsene, we were always very thin. It was, I think, only like in 2015, we had the level of depth that we really required in the Emirates era. Do you know what I mean? Like we just always were like a couple players short. And so I think when you look at Arsenal, you're like, I noticed this with rivals. Anytime that our player is linked to coming to Arsenal, their first thing is, well, who's going? Because Arsenal historically have not had quality and depth in their side. So I think that's why like people are questioning like, okay, well, if so and so is out, then they must not be a part of the plans, because it's not something that we're used to. We're used to like a traditional starting 11, and if a player is no longer in that starting 11, they're probably not in the plans anymore, because they're probably not going to play because Arteta doesn't rotate. Or if we're looking at somebody else in that position, that must mean so and so is going. I think it's just historically people are not used to Arsenal having a certain level of depth, right? But also the timing of the rumors from the Saudi Arabian teams, I do think made it a little bit more like, oh my gosh, like this makes so much sense. Saudi Arabian rumors, Gabriel on the bench means transfer. Do you know what I mean? I think that it's more that than anything else. Amon says Gabriel ain't leaving, especially since he's got given the armband as soon as he came on. What I will say, and I was thinking about this before I came on the show, because I wanted to be very clear in like the way that like, because I know people can misconstrue things. Like, I'm not saying that I don't think Edu and Arteta are always on the same page. Like, I'm not saying that I think that they're feuding, but I wouldn't be surprised if Arteta felt strongly about players that maybe the club doesn't feel as strongly about. Do you know what I mean? And we have to sell players. Like, the amount of money that we've spent and the lack of sales that have come in, I would imagine that Arsenal are in a position where they need to get some sales. Like, they have to balance the books. And so sales have been slow this window, which, I think that's another conversation for another day, that we once again look like we're really struggling to sell. So there might be a surprise sale that maybe the club are open to looking at, but maybe Arteta's not so open to. I think, it was Arteta's very calculated in every single thing that he does, and I don't think you should take anything lightly that he does. I think giving Gabriel the armband and giving Nketiah the armband are very calculated moves from Arteta to show that these are my people. Like, these are the guys that I love, I trust. You don't give the armband to just anybody. Like, you just don't. And so it may be the case that the club are, looking at different options and looking for different, pathways for people to maybe move on and bring some cash in, where Arteta's looking at the team and being like, I don't want it to get any weaker at this point. And so that's me guessing, but I think Arteta is somebody that likes to make public proclamations of things, and he does it in a very overt way, in a very obvious way. And giving Gabriel the armband to me seems like a message from Arteta that this is a player that I want around. Same thing with Eddie and Nketiah, so that's just my guess. But I don't think Gabriel leaves at this point. It's just too close to the end of the window. And if something like that were to happen, it would have needed to happen a lot earlier on. Tash says, Gabby signed a new contract 8 months ago. We haven't signed competitor like with Ramsdale. I don't think signing a new contract means anything. I'll be really honest with you guys. I think it's a business thing. It's a smart thing to do in order to make sure that you can get maximum value from all your players. For me, contract extensions don't necessarily always mean you're here for good or you're here for life. Yeah. So, I mean, Balogun signed a new deal and, he's on his way out. Like, I just don't see signing a new deal as, any sort of like anything, not for everybody. Like for Saka, it means something. For Saliba, it means something. I feel like for other players, it's retaining value and making sure that if for some reason a Real Madrid or, Juventus came in for a Gabriel, we were able to make sure we got maximum value from that. But again, I don't think Gabriel is going anywhere right now. Tanubik says Al Ittihad has been linked to Varane, Gabriel, and Marquinhos in the last month. It's clear that they're looking for CBs. Gabby ain't going nowhere. We just don't have there's just not enough time to even think about a replacement, I don't think, so super important to make sure that we don't sell ourselves short. I also think like Timber's injury just, defensively, we're not in a position to be moving somebody on without a suitable replacement at this point, so yeah. Dale says, according to Sport Track, Gabriel is paid 50 thousand K, grossly underpaid. Why wouldn't he be consider leaving? And that's the other thing is I do think that like, there is a chance that maybe even Gabrielle is looking at it like, if they offer me something, that I can't refuse, I'll take it, So I think there's plenty of different ways of thinking about this. But ultimately, if Gabriel is not playing and the center back pairing that I'm seeing is Saliba and White, I'm good with that. But yeah, when the lineup kind of came out and we started hearing, people saying that Gabriel wouldn't be starting, I was like, whew, that's a little strange, So there you go. But other, things about the lineup, like nothing really shocked me. Arteta's been kind of hard-headed, not hard-headed, like, you know what I mean? Like very kind of like adamant about the, Partey at right back, Declan Rice in the six, but, also like pretty much playing in midfield with Thomas Partey and um, Havertz playing in that like left center midfield position, and Eddie starting up front. And I think there's a lot there to pick on, a lot to pick on there, for sure. Um, I would say, like, in terms of right back, I think early on in the game against Crystal Palace, Thomas Partey was a little shaky. Tomiyasu as well. And I think it's just a matter of positioning, being in places that aren't necessarily normal to you. Thomas Partey was like, he knew exactly who was next to him and how things worked last season. He had Xhaka to his left, he had Odegaard to his right, he had Saliba and Gabriel behind him. And so everything was like that was what he knew. And now moving him to right back, even though it's not really right back, and we all know that he's like playing in midfield, you can just see that there's like a little bit of like, okay, where am I? But what I will say is that I think he was one of our best performers yesterday. I thought, when you look back at his statistics and how he grew throughout the game, he really kind of like got his feet underneath them. He won almost every single duel. He was pretty reliable on the ball as well. Like his passing was good. And so I think he did well, despite me still kind of feeling like that's probably not where I want him playing. Do you know what I mean? So the right back, Thomas Partey thing is quite interesting because when he made those first couple of like bad passes, you could say people were like, "Get him out of there! Get him out of there! Get him out of there!" He ended up having a good game, but I just wonder when Zinchenko comes back, what happens with that position, because Zinchenko is a player that I just think you have to have on the pitch right now. Like there's just our left hand side is just not clicking the way that it needs to. I think against deeper blocks, he's probably our best player in terms of unlocking those little, passageways and paths and stuff like that. And so I would imagine at some point you want to get Zinchenko in the team. And if you do that and you want to maintain your three center back kind of formation, then that would mean that a decision probably would need to be made with Thomas Partey, Declan Rice, and Havertz. And that's a very interesting kind of like wrinkle that I'm very interested to see how that unfolds, because I actually was very interested to see what would have happened with Timber, because Timber was playing really well. And I was like, so when Zinchenko comes back, what's going to happen? But there's still something there, because it's like, I think Thomas Partey is too good to drop, but Arteta, I think, is adamant about making Havertz work. So, something needs to happen there. But Thomas Partey at right back, I think, worked on the day, but is not something that I think we can do long term. And I feel like you need to get him back in midfield at some point. Um, it's interesting. Tenebik says, I think Arteta only trusts Zinni and Partey to invert. Next up is Kiwi, but he's still learning. Yeah, I don't think inverting is an easy thing to do. I think, we saw it with I think it was on the maybe the was it the second game, or yeah, the second game for Spurs. They had Pedro Porro like trying to invert, and he's a decent player, but it's not for everybody. And so, you have Partey that can do it and you have Zinchenko that can do it. But I think the combination of the two at the base of our midfield is something that really, really works. We haven't seen Zinchenko plus Rice, and I haven't seen Zinchenko not invert. So we have a lot to uncover and understand and learn about this team in the next couple of weeks, because we were just so settled last season and things are not the same this season at all. But Kiwior is definitely somebody that I want to see more of, because I think he's better on the ball than Tomiyasu. Tommy, is a good player and a good defender, but I think Kiwior is better on the ball. So with him obviously suspended now, it'll be interesting to see what Arteta goes with. Does he kind of like rush Zinchenko back in, or does he trust Kiwi? We'll see. Chris says this system can work, but Partey can't be dropping to right back. Have Rice drop into the back line. White moves out to right back and keep Partey in midfield. Rice did that for West Ham all the time. Yeah, and maybe that's something that Arteta is looking at. How, because I think at this point it's, how do I get Thomas Partey, Havertz, and Rice in this team all at once? Because maybe he doesn't trust Rice on his own yet, but also Havertz, there's such a huge outlay on him that you kind of have to make it work and keep him in the team. So, maybe that's something that he can do is, have Rice drop into the back line, and, Partey and Zinchenko still do their thing at the base of midfield. But we'll see how that unfolds. That's the first time I heard somebody say that, and that does sound like it can work. But one thing about Rice that I really like is his ability to, you know, dribble from deep and progress the ball. And I'm a little apprehensive about him just sitting in the back line. I feel like, I don't know if that's the best use of his powers, but yeah. Boy says all that's need now is for Rice to take the on-field motivation reins that Xhaka has left behind. He looked ready for it last night. Aman says Rice was really good at the 6 yesterday. He looked comfortable there instead of the left of a diamond against Forest. Blaze says Arsenal fans complained last season that Arteta don't experiment enough and don't rotate the squad. Right now, he does all that, and we still complain, call Arteta stubborn. Well, I mean, I get that. Like, I think there's wanting him to experiment, but also just some things we've saw from last season don't necessarily work. And so, like, it's last season. Like, it's not really experimenting at this point. We know that Martinelli and Nketiah don't work together. We know that. So it's kind of like, that's from last season. And so I get this whole like argument that like, oh my gosh, like he's trying to try new things and now you guys are just complaining all the time. But I think we're well within our right to look at things and say that doesn't look like it's working. Maybe we should try something different. I don't necessarily know if it's complaining. It's more just talking about what you see. So yeah. I just, some things we've seen already just don't really work. Aha says, I think Arteta isn't playing Gabriel is because he wanted to try and invert from the right. Can't have him at left back out of possession. We need rotation, variety to be able to cope without key players. And that's another thing, is maintaining Saliba at center back is so important because he's the best one to do it. And in preseason, there was like one game, I think it was against Man United, where Gabriel ended up being the center back. I think Timber was inverting from the right, and it was like Saliba, Gabriel, and Tomiyasu, and that just didn't work. Like, it didn't work in any way, shape, or form. So maintaining Saliba as the center back means that you have to move things around if you want to keep certain guys in the team and have certain things there. And so it could just be that. And like, I don't think Gabriel needs to play every single game. I think it was just more because Palace was going to be what it is. It's a cauldron. It's a small ground. It's going to be like everybody on top of you, that you want your warriors back there. But like I already said, I think Saliba and White really handled it well. But it's weird not seeing him in the team because we know that he started every single game. And it could just be that Arteta wants to try new things. And, it is what it is, let's see. Just Ajay says, I think Kiwior is better in possession, but has been caught on the ball by Nuremberg and the MLS. And I do think that, like, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's that little bit of, like, I'm so good on the ball that I'm a little bit arrogant with it, and then I get caught on it, and then, and actually after that, Kivior started playing quite a bit less, and so I wonder if it's just a little bit of, like, trying to manage that and not expose Kivior so much and kind of, like, make sure that he knows that when you get there on the pitch, you have to take care of the ball if you're gonna invert and stuff, because the thing is Zinchenko, he rarely gets pickpocketed, but when he does, they're in on goal. And so you have to be very careful with that. But I know exactly what you're talking about. 100%. So yeah, but in the game, just on the first half, like, I think we did look better than we did against Forest in the first half. I think that um we were opening them up a little bit more. And yeah, it took about 20 minutes or so, but I just think, like, when teams are sitting in a lower block, it's just a little bit harder to kind of like get things going and move things around. I do think we're a little bit apprehensive to use space centrally, which I think is like a direct, like, effect of not having like a Jesus central. Jesus will receive the ball anywhere. And I think that there isn't necessarily that, like, confidence in passing it into Nketiah in those situations. Like, he really has to come, like, really deep and has to be really obvious in order to pass it to him central. And we're a little bit apprehensive also to pass it into the channels. I think, there were a couple of times where you saw guys making runs and we just didn't necessarily put the ball into those positions. But after like the first 20 minutes, we did start to, like, work through the gears and open them up a little bit. Nketiah should have had a goal in the first half. I think it was just the first half. If I'm not mistaken, like, it was the one where, him and Saka worked on that side and it was like pressing and he turned and it was really nice to hit the post. Um that was really nice. There was also the one in like the first 2 minutes of the game where Kai Havertz found some space on the right hand side and it opened up the whole left hand side, and Martinelli really should have gotten a shot off earlier. So we had chances, even though it wasn't like a lot of them. But I did feel a lot better. Not a lot, but better than how I did when I was watching us against Forest. I thought against Forest, we looked really pedestrian. I think in this game, we were a little bit better. And as the half went on, I thought Rice really came into the game and started taking control of the midfield. Once everybody kind of settled down a little bit, he started finding more space. And there was also the chance where Declan Rice slipped it into Eddie Nketiah and he tried to chip the goalkeeper. And those have to go in the goal. They have to be goals, like, they just do. But we found opportunities and we probably should have put them away. But I felt a lot better about that half than I did about Forest. Um, and so at that point, like, at halftime, I did feel very confident that we would win the game, even though I felt like it would be a 1-0 or a 2-0. I didn't think we would blow them away. Crystal Palace defended really well. They defended their box really well. Like, you have to give teams, like, credit for what they did. I thought they defended really well. But we could have done some things a lot better. And one of the things that, we saw a lot in that half was, like, we would get around the area instead of, like, taking a quick shot, people would turn back and take a bunch of touches. And I'm not sure if that's just, like, a lack of confidence or what, but our shape, our pressing, defensively, we were really good, but there's just something not quite right about the front players, and we get opportunities, but we're not clinical enough, and that could end up being an issue, but ultimately, like, we were good. Like, I thought we were good in that first half, for sure. Says that chip attempt in Nketiah should have scored. The first chance with the left foot was unlucky. He was decent yesterday and was better than our other attacking players who weren't that great. Do you guys ever notice that whenever Nketiah plays, he's probably one of our better attackers, but everybody else is not as good? I do think that sometimes, like, it's so obvious what's going on. And, Nketiah is such, like, a traditional number 9 that, like, he doesn't bring Martinelli and Saka into the game the way that Jesus or Trossard would. And so I just think it's really obvious what's going on, that like we play better with a false nine, somebody that's more like a number 10 that drops deep and gives you space in behind and brings the other players in. And I think Martinelli and Saka are just missing a little bit of that. Also, Kai Havertz against Barcelona when he was playing with Gabriel Jesus and Trossard, those mechanisms were there. The movement was there. The fluidity was there. Um, it's a pattern that like whenever kind of like Nketiah plays, it's not that he plays bad. And like that's the thing. It's like I think and anytime you say anything like even remotely like we play better with other players, people just instantly think that you don't see the good work that Nketiah does. Nketiah almost had the perfect center forward performance yesterday. Had he had put any, even just one of those chances away, that would have been Nketiah's best ever performance as an Arsenal player. He was very, very good. The issue is that he doesn't, because it's not a part of his game. It's not even like shade on Nketiah. Like it's not like, like it's not like he's not doing it because he doesn't want to, is because it's just not a part of who he is. And so the players that we're used to like creating for they're not seeing the same patterns, they're not making the same runs, they're not feeling the same things that they did last season when it was like more with Jesus or Trossard. So I think every time we talk about Nketiah playing well, we're usually talking about everybody else not looking as good. And I think that that's just a symptom of Nketiah being in the team, you know? And I don't even think like it's anybody's fault. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not blaming Nketiah, but he doesn't unlock the other players the way that the false nines do in our team, and that's just what it is. But he had such a good game, and that is the nuance and balance in these conversations. But if you say anything, you get absolutely murdered. And I think people just they hear, okay, because here's my thing. I'm always gonna prefer Gabriel Jesus or Trossard in the team, always. So even if Nketiah plays really, really well, I'm always probably going to lean towards that because the fluidity that they give us gives us more goals. I think we leave goals on the bench when we don't play those players, right? Because Saka and Martinelli are not getting as much service and things are just not fluid the way that they were. We're not opening up space. And we just score less goals. Like, and the thing about Nketiah is like, I think in order for him, like for us to justify him starting in these games, he has to be so clinical that the lack of fluidity doesn't matter. But as good as he was, he missed clear chances. And so that is kind of like it. Like it's not as clear and cut and dry as Nketiah is playing well. So he should just play every game. I think as good as he's playing, I can see Gabriel Jesus coming straight back into the team because that will help Martinelli, that will help Kai Havertz, and that will help Saka. And those are players that need to be playing well in order for us to do something. So the conversation is so much deeper than did Nketiah play well or not. And that's just, it's hard to have those conversations because people get instantly in their feelings about things. They don't want to hear anything because they feel like it's negativity. It's really, really not. I think Nketiah had almost the perfect game yesterday. And it's so hard to justify dropping him because he's playing so well. But if Gabriel Jesus was fit tomorrow, I would start him against Fulham because I know that will help our 15 goal a season winger Martinelli play better. That'll help 70 million pound, 200,000 pound per week attacking midfielder Kai Havertz and also Saka. So yeah, it's just one of those things. It's just really one of those things like, you know, but it's just hard to have those conversations because people get in their feelings all the time. Thab says Nketiah will look much better with Trossard at left center mid. Fair enough. Coach Dave says he had a decent game, but he's not consistent enough to lead the line. He's there for GA, and if he's not doing that, then what is he doing? All that work rate is just the standard. Missing those chances it's always going to stand out because that's what a striker is there for. And so, yeah, he really like if we're 2-0 up, we're just in no danger really. And so I'm just finding us scoring goals a lot more difficult with Nketiah and the team. But he's playing well. It's so difficult. Like, it really is. T01 says, just since Eddie is a more traditional number 9, do you think this will be an issue when we get a top striker next summer, i.e. like Osimhen? Will that work with Nelly if this is not working now? I think the problem is that, like, we have a couple of players in the team that really require that player in the team. And so it doesn't end up being an issue if the player that's playing in that position is so clinical that we don't think about it. And I also think that, like, if you have somebody like Havertz at left center mid that really does require that false 9, you have to have a center mid that does different things. And so that profile of midfielder we don't have yet. And I wonder if that midfielder comes in at some point and it's just a traditional center midfielder, box to box, that, scores goals, defends, is a high touch player, things like that, that doesn't necessarily have to play off of a striker. You know, it's we don't necessarily have that profile yet. I don't necessarily feel like it'll be a problem because if you have a top number 9, you don't really worry about your wingers scoring so many goals and getting so many assists, like more the goals, because, like, if you look at City, once they got Holland was scoring all the goals, and their wingers weren't really putting up the numbers that Saka and Martinelli are putting up. So I don't necessarily feel like it'll be a problem as long as that person is super clinical and we don't care. But also, I feel like the number 9 that we get will probably be somebody that has some level of link up play. I don't see us getting somebody that's like can't do anything in terms of link up and creativity, So there's a certain striker that I'm thinking of that I feel like would actually be good for us. That can do all the things that Jesus does, but also is clinical. And he may have just done an interview and might be on a betting ban. Jeff says Eddie plays best against the low block, which is why most of his goals come at home. He played well last night because Palace let us come to them. Don't worry about his finishing. That will come. Fair enough. Let's see. Chris says, in a system designed for an Eddie-style striker, he'd score 20 goals a season. Clip it. Won't happen at Arsenal, though. I actually agree with that. I think Eddie and Nketiah, like, in most teams like that play not like us, how he would thrive, like, especially if he's playing every single game. I think Nketiah has also showed that he needs to be somebody that plays every single day. So that's just, what it is. Eddie had a fantastic game yesterday. I just still prefer something a little bit different. And that's a personal preference. It's a personal preference. Like, for real. Like, it just is. Aman says, the left-hand side is so unbalanced right now, in my opinion. Nelly and Kai need Jesus Trossard as the false 9, while Eddie needs Jesus Nelson left wing and Trossard ESR as a left centerman. The left-hand side is quite imbalanced, and it's not working, but you would have to imagine that no Xhaka, no Zinchenko would mean that that side would have to relearn itself. And I don't necessarily feel like anything is similar. Havertz and Xhaka are not similar, and Tomiyasu and Zinchenko are not similar. So it's so different that it doesn't really provide anything for Martinelli to work off of that feels normal to him. So that's just going to take time. I think that's just going to take time. And then also just figuring out what pieces actually work or not, So it's just one of those, But that first half, I thought, the chances that Eddie had probably should have put them away. One unlucky, one definitely should have put away. We had a couple of decent shots, the chance in the first, like, couple of minutes. I thought we were okay. I just want to point out Saliba as well. I thought he was absolutely out of this world yesterday. A lot of the conversation will be about Declan Rice because he's new and he was fantastic as well. But Saliba looks like he's gone to another level, and not necessarily like he's that much better of a defender, but I think he's just very comfortable in his skin. And, like, a good player when they make a mistake and they recover it like it's nothing. And that tackle that everybody was talking about in the first half, from Saliba was really like a consequence of his own mistake. But he's just so good and he timed it perfectly. It was funny because I watched the game and the commentary live was, "Oh, is it a penalty? Oh, is it a penalty? Is it a penalty?" And then when I rewatched it, like the American commentary was doing the same thing. If there was never a doubt in my mind that was like the best time tackle. It was the Crystal Palace player didn't even like do anything. He didn't even ask for a penalty because it was so well timed. And it's just what I will say, like, do you guys remember the days of Mustafi? Do you guys remember the days of Socrates? Like, every day when I watch us play, I have to just sit back and say, like, I'm just happy that we have players that, like, can actually play for real, for real. And we're very blessed to have Saliba back there because that guy could end up being the best center back in the world. He has all the tools, all the tools. The aura, the confidence, almost like borderline arrogance on the ball. He's so good. He's quick. He's strong. He's worked on his heading as well. I thought he had a fantastic game yesterday. And it's Saliba +1 for me. Like, I think it's like that for most people. It's Saliba plus whoever else. The guy is freaking insane. Like, I just love that guy so much. Boy says Kashani would have knocked an own goal in for Palace. He had one of those. He had those in him, doesn't he? Like, he has that in him. Kashani. Elliot Roberts says after the season, Saliba will be deemed world class. Hope we can keep him for as long as possible. I agree. Dob says Rice, Saliba, and Nketiah, our spine was amazing. Martin N says Ben White deserves praise as well. The thing about Ben White is that he's so good all the time and he is such a consistent performer that we don't even recognize this performances anymore. He was very, very good. Like, he was probably top 3 performers for me yesterday. I thought for somebody that people pretend like he lost his center back spot because Arteta didn't think he was a good center back, that's just bullshit. Like, it's not that. We have players that can play multiple positions, and Ben White is like the archetype of an Arteta player. Like, athletically, he's strong enough, he's fast enough, he's agile enough, he's good on the ball, he has good football IQ, he loves to defend. So he's like, I think it's almost like a myth that Ben White is like not a real defender. The guy loves defending. And so Ben White does deserve a lot of credit, but I can understand why people don't talk about him because he's such a consistent performer in multiple positions and he's so reliable. So Ben White was excellent in that game, and I love him to bits. I do. He's great. I have nothing more to say about Ben White because you need those types of players in your team. They don't have to be fancy or anything like that. They just get the job done. Aman says Ben White is Mr. Consistent. I agree. Nikki says White is another Monreal steady Eddie, consistent 7 out of 10 or higher performance per game. I love that. Triple C says we're all going to pretend like we didn't witness a Ben White masterclass. Man keeps dropping 8 and 9 out of 10 performances like it's nothing. You guys know my feeling on Ben White and why nobody talks about him as well is because, like, we have this thing where where Ben White had that debut against Brentford, and people had already made their mind up that they didn't understand what we were doing with our recruitment and Ramsdale and Ben White and Odegaard. Why we buying these players? They don't make us any better. And so the feeling was like, if they're not perfect on their debut, we're gonna kill them. And he wasn't perfect on his debut. In fact, nobody was. Like, that game was horrendous. Remember it? It was like we had Lacazette and Aubameyang go down with COVID like a day before. Like, it was some wild stuff going on. And he just didn't have the best debut. And Gary Neville sat up there on his little high horse and was up there talking about how he didn't understand what we were doing. And Ben White was awful. And instead of people like standing up for him or at least like saying, give him time, we underpin that opinion by saying, yeah, I don't understand it either. And I think that was so damaging that, like, now people act like Ben White doesn't exist. And so I think that's kind of like the moral of the story is like, I don't think you had to say Ben White was going to be the best player in the world or that he had a fantastic game when he didn't. But, I do think that just like chiming in on it, once our fan base nails it down, it becomes like fact. And so Ben White for me is one of those, that he'll never get the recognition that he deserves because that was enough for people to completely write him off. And I mean, to this day, Gary Neville is saying that he's a question mark. And if that's not the most suspect opinion I've ever heard, is ridiculous. Mr. Mister says Ben White kind of reminds me of Dennis Irwin at Man United years ago. He's consistently 8 or 9 every week, so nobody notices him. El Dennis says, on a bad day, White drops a 7 out of 10. We are so used to it, we don't even comment anymore. Blaze says, it's interesting to see how Saliba, Ben White can improve together this season. Both are good players and have potential to be world-class players. I do think Ben White is one of there's like 5 players that I do think in our team can and will be world-class. He's one of them. I rate him so highly. And so, yeah, but we don't have to talk about him every single day because he just does the business. He really does. There's 140 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. So I think we obviously have to talk about like the goal because we did end up scoring a goal and it was a penalty. And I think one of the more interesting parts of that conversation is it was very good thinking, like quick thinking by Martinelli. I thought out of everything that he contributed in that game, it wasn't his best game. That was the contribution. Like it was very quick thinking, good thinking. And Eddie to be like up on that and like on the same wavelength, I thought was very smart. And Eddie wins penalties for us, which is great. I think it's because he just senses like, I don't know, it's like he senses mistakes. Like he's really good at that kind of stuff. And so we win the penalty and Saka doesn't step up for it. It's Odegaard. And I thought that was interesting just because I think we had conversations in preseason around who should be our penalty taker. And I was very kind of like vocal about feeling like we needed to switch some of these, like try new people just because like penalties should be like a 99% guarantee. Like I think when you get them, you have to feel like it's a goal. And at a certain point, it felt 50-50 to me. And it's not shade. It just is what it is. Like, I looked at the statistics of all of our players and statistically Kai Havertz is our best penalty taker. And Jorginho is the next best. So Jorginho doesn't play enough to make him the penalty taker. And I don't know if, maybe that's just too much pressure for Kai right now. I think the last thing he needs is to be one of our penalty takers. So, you have Captain Fantastic step up and do it. And, I thought he put it away great. The keeper went the complete wrong direction. But I just wanted to throw it out to you guys and say, like, what do you guys think about the penalty situation? Because it's something that I felt like needed to happen, at least us trying new people. But again, when you say that, like, Saka's best quality is probably not taking penalties, you get absolutely shitted on. But the reality is that your penalty taker kind of needs to be able to put it away 99% of the time. And if they can't do that, despite how good they are, you might need to look at a different solution. You know what I mean? So it's one of those where, again, like, it's just not that deep. Saka's like our best player, but penalties is not his thing, so, and that's just is what it is. That's just where I'm at. Crispy says, definitely practice in training with good execution. Coach Dave says Saka is 50-50 at best on pens. He has a 60% penalty success rate. Crispy says Odegaard is fine on pens, ice in the veins. I like that. Dale says, is a chicken or egg question. I thought it was Nketiah's movement that triggered Martinelli's pass and not the other way around. Fair enough. I think both of them, that was really good thinking. So they can both take credit for it. It's been a long time since Arsenal have been smart, and done things like that. So I don't care how it happened. Both of them could take credit for it. It was very smart thinking. Iman says Odegaard is ice cold in the veins or ice cold on pens. Boy says not fussed with who the penalty taker is. Give it to whoever wants to take it. Hightower says, I think they were playing mind games. You could see the CP players trying to put Saka off. Fair enough. And Arteta said, after the game, that he didn't know that Odegaard would take it. Odegaard asked if he could take it, and Saka said yes. And so I'm willing to believe that that's what happened. Like, I really don't care. I want it to be a certainty when we go up there and we put penalties away. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's all I really care about. I don't care who it is. It could be Ramsdale for all I care, as long as it's in the back of the net, and we're going to get more of those situations. And I just want to feel really confident. One thing that I will say this season that I do think is nagging in the back of my head that it won't go away is it was penalties and dead ball situations in general. I think our free kicks, our corners are not quite at the level that it should be. Last season, at the beginning of the season, it was like our free kick routines, our corner kick routines were really good and were really fruitful for us. And I think I'm finding like what we're doing, kicking it to the front post, is not quite working on corners. The quality of our deliveries are not great, and it's something that I think needs to be fixed. But in terms of penalties, I'm glad to see somebody else step up and, try something new, because it was needed, I think, for sure. Prime Henri says, 3 years ago, I understand why Saka is on pens, but now we have a lot of great pen takers. Only natural to let others step up. I agree. Michael says, I thought it was also smart that Saka was holding the ball for so long, and then Odegaard took it at the last second. The Crystal Palace goalkeeper was panicking. And so that's a really good thing as well. Like, you guys picked up on that like, it could have just been mind games. People might have thought it was going to be Saka, but Odegaard, people have rarely seen him take penalties. So if that was planned, that's also very smart. Anything that you can gain on the margins is good, because again, that was a very close game, probably closer than we wanted. So, if that was the difference in it going in or not, then I'll take that. Saksham says, Nketiah was our best attacker yesterday. Jeff says, it's all the boss's views on being unreadable. Palace would have worked on Saka taking the penalty. I like that. Biscotti says Saka's penalty conversion isn't 60%. It is 60%. I have the graphic, unless the graphic is wrong from Sky Sports, then I would imagine that it's right. In all competitions, it's 60%. Nocturnal Gunner says our corners are horrendous. We could never beat the first man, and I don't know what the F is the plan. I don't either. I don't understand why we've went downhill badly on our penalty, or not our penalties, our dead balls. So I don't know what it's about. Corners, dead ball situations, it's not working, So yeah. Biscotti says Martinelli and Saka are good at corners. What do you mean? So there's a difference between being good at deliveries and actually executing it. So I'm not quite sure if it's what Nicholas Jover is telling them to do, to hit it to the front post or not. I imagine that that's what they're saying to do, but it's not working, and it hasn't worked since preseason. We've been doing it since preseason, but also there's been a couple of times where the guy that's taking the corners have just kicked it out, or the person that's taking our free kicks have just kicked it out, so it's an area of improvement, I think. It's no shade. It's not, again, like, noting things that people can do better, or things that I don't think are as good as they probably should be, is not me saying that like Martinelli and Saka are not great players, like they are. But I've literally seen Martinelli take a penalty, like not a penalty, a corner kick, and it just go out, And so we need to brush up on that, because we, like, from corners, we scored like 13 goals last season. And, as a team that thrives off of many people scoring, like, and many different ways of scoring, like, we cannot afford not to score from set pieces. It's just, we have to. Prime Henri says set pieces are in general poor. Been saying this for a while. Gabriel was our top CB scorer 2 seasons ago. We should be focusing on this. Last season, at the beginning of the season, we were scoring loads of goals off of free kicks and corners and stuff like that. This season, I'm not sure what's gone on. I'm really not. Aha says we should aim for Havertz for set pieces, even if we're trying to do the near close flick ons, and he's the one doing the flick on for corners. Nocturnal says Martinelli should never take corners. Jeff says they are trying the bold flick onto Adams. It's not working. James Bond says, big up, Jess, big up to you as well. Dale says, corners used to be our get out of jail ticket. It's getting to a point I almost don't want corners. The counter potential scares me. Yeah, no, I hear you. It's one of those where, you know, it's just in the back of my head all the time that I'm like, what has happened to us? Like, it's definitely not as good as it used to be, but nevertheless, we do get the goal about 50 minutes in on the penalty. Odegaard buries in, and it's great. We do have to talk about the big refereeing decision, and I'll give you guys my feeling on this, and I know people won't like it because they never like anything that I say. But so as soon as we scored, we started time wasting like a mother F. We really did. Like on goal kicks, everything, we were just taking so long to do everything. And we know with the new rules that they're being very over the top with the time wasting rule. And we've seen that like you can get a yellow just for time wasting. Like they're definitely trying to make an example out of teams and stuff like that. So I was a little frustrated where we started time wasting at the 50th minute, I think, or 55th minute, because I think we should be pushing for the second goal, not trying to take time off of the clock. And because of the new rules, it was very like in my mind that I was like, I'm not sure we should be doing this. And really with the yellow card that Tomiyasu got, he was the fall guy, because we all know that Kai Havertz actually held onto the ball significantly longer than Tomiyasu, but David Coote was yellow carded Arsenal for time wasting from the minute that we scored that goal, because we were taking so long on our goal kicks and everything. And so I think Tomiyasu just ended up being the fall guy for that. And so that's why he got the yellow card, not because he was the one time wasting, but I just think that like we just started time wasting. And I said it on the day when I saw it, and then when I rewatched it, it's true. Like we did. And we time waste all the time. We love the dark arts. It's something that we always do. Like everybody does it, but it's something that we do. And it's not something that I dislike. I just feel like with the rules being what they are, like I'm surprised that I've seen so many Arsenal players, do the yellow card. I'm surprised at that, because we all know that like those rules have changed, but we haven't changed our behavior, which is strange to me, but whatever. So then, 7 minutes later or something like that, the ball kind of like is chipped over to him, and Tomiyasu turns and barely touches him, and he goes down, and David Coote gives him the second yellow, and that becomes a red card. And that's a horrendous yellow card to give. Rewatching it over and over and over again, not only does Tomiyasu not grab his shirt, but Tomiyasu doesn't even really touch him, and Ayew definitely bought that, and he knew that the referee was stupid, and I just feel like, that was it was reminiscent to me of the double yellow that Martinelli got, where you just will never see it again. You'll never see it again. Like it'll never happen again, but it happened to us. And so the first yellow card, I think we set ourselves up for it, knowing that the rules are what they are. The second one, very unlucky to get, and like quite frankly, it's barely even a foul. Like it is probably not even one. Like Ayew definitely bought that. And for Ayew to have been on a yellow card, and then he actually did grab Saka's shirt. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's like David Coote couldn't see that. But yeah, it's very unfortunate and very harsh for Tomiyasu, because I don't think he deserved either one of those yellow cards based on his own actions, right? And so then we're down to 10 men with 30 minutes to go, 30 minutes plus, because there was like 7 minutes of extra time. It's a long time to be down to 10 men. And so, I have mixed feelings about it. I do think that when the rules change, sometimes you have to modify your behavior to make sure that you don't get in trouble. And I thought that time wasting so early on for me was just kind of like, we should be pushing for the second goal, not wasting time. But the second one was so stupid. Like it just made no sense, because Tomiyasu didn't even touch Ayew at all. It was just like nothing, you know? And we've seen it, like the double yellow for Martinelli, the red card penalty for David Luiz against Wolves, like things that you'll never see again, but happen to us. And it's very frustrating. And I feel bad for Tommy. I really do. But he was definitely the fall guy for the first one. And yeah, it's just poor officiating. I think they're trying to over referee the games. I think they should pull themselves away from being so heavily like involved in games and just let it fucking go. Like, you know, I think the higher threshold for penalties is great. I think, you know, not giving so many handball penalties away is has been a good modification. But this whole time wasting bullshit, like it's just a little over the top. Like, you know, for me, it's just a lot. Like Christopher says, second yellow should let VAR in. Yeah, it would be nice to be able to look at second yellows, but it's just not something that's within the rules at this point. But Scotty says it's just instincts. It's going to take some time to fully adjust to the new rules. Saksham says Tommy was robbed. I agree. Boy says they went WWE Kurt Angle Olympic wrestling on Saka, but no card. And you could see the way that Ayu even ran away after that interaction, that he knew that he was close, you could tell. But the ref was just, that's horrendous. Like it makes no sense. Like, come on. And we don't need the refs to be the main story of the games. And like they have played pretty big roles in a lot of the games already this season. And I just think that they're doing a poor job. See, Walter says, I personally thought that Palace player, can't remember who, that dived in our box should have been booked. What with the low bar that the ref set? Yeah, I'll say this, Eze, as good of a player as he is, he was gagging for a penalty yesterday, and he went down more than one time, you know, to try to get a penalty, and he definitely dove. And so I'm glad that they didn't, you know, fall for it, but he should have got a yellow for it. He just continued to try to get a penalty. Like it was very annoying. But yeah, like I like the threshold is higher for a penalty. I like that the handball rule is not as like, oh, if it just grazes your hand, it's a penalty. Like I'm glad, but like one, they're not consistent, and two, like I just feel like this time wasting, like all these yellow cards, it's a nonsense. It really is. Let's see. Dale says we were more likely to give up a goal. 11 versus 11 was a red, a blessing in disguise. How about that for a take? I don't know, because like I'll be really honest with you guys, against Forest and against Fulham, not Fulham, Crystal Palace, I felt really comfortable defensively. Like I know that we gave up that silly goal, like against Nottingham Forest, where they just came down or whatever, like, you know, but for the majority of the game, I felt relatively fine. And even when Crystal Palace, when they went, they had 11 men and we only had 10, I felt comfortable. I don't think they created too much, like, you know what I mean? And throughout the game, I don't think they created too much. I thought they had that one chance where, you know, Ayu skinned Tomiyasu and put that ball into the box and Ramsdale parried it out. They had a wild shot in the first half. They had a couple of little half chances, but defensively, I feel like we've been all right. I think attacking wise is where things kind of need to be retooled a little bit. But yeah, like we defend really well down to 10 men. Like it's something that we've seen quite a bit. Not last season. We did not get a single red card last season, but the season prior, we had many, you know, times where we had to do that. And so I never really worry about us with 10 men defending because we do it really well. We have enough players back there that love defending and love that part of the game. And adding somebody like Declan Rice only makes you more, you know, formidable back there. And so, yeah, maybe we did defend a little bit better with 10, you know, with 10, but ultimately throughout the game, even with 11, I didn't really feel that threatened by Crystal Palace. If I'm really honest, I thought we managed them very well. Sekshem says the rules should be changed. If a second yellow is given, VAR should be used to check. I agree. Aman says this new setup, Arteta has made us less vulnerable to counterattacks and more control. Could be. Holdini Gunnar Legend says, no, he doesn't slow us down. We were slow generally. When we moved it quicker for a minute or two, Kai was involved as well. So you guys are talking about that. We will get to the Kai Havertz conversation, trust me. Aman says the technical ability we have in our team when we went down to 10 men. I mean, it must be nice to be able to bring on players like Jorginho and Zinchenko and Kivior to really get, because we struggled a little bit there with 10 men because we needed to get the right players out there. And I think Arteta was like, okay, we don't necessarily need an outlet. We need to control possession and give ourselves a breather that way. And so he took all of our attackers off. Saka came off. Didn't Saka come off? I think he did. Nketiah, Martinelli, like Odegaard. I think all of them came off. Maybe not Saka. I'm not sure. I forgot. But like almost all of our attackers came off, and he brought on like more defenders and midfielders. But we started to be able to maintain possession, which was so important. And we had that like 2-minute passage of play where it was like Jorginho and Zinchenko and Kivior and Partey and Rice were just popping it around. And that's exactly what we needed at that moment, which was nice. And he made the right moves then. It's important, I think, when things are not perfect to be able to like manage those moments and not crumble. And that's exactly what the team did. They didn't have an outlet, but they defended well to a point where we could get those substitutes on and then have some possession. And so, yeah, I thought we managed the game very well at 10 men down. We didn't look phased. We didn't look scared. We didn't crumble. And I think, maybe a season or two ago, we do give up that goal and, whatever. But defensively, we've looked very good to me this season so far. Now, the challenges will obviously get a lot harder because I don't think Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace are the best attacking sides. But again, more attacking sides are going to allow us more space. And so the more space that we have, the more dangerous we become. So, yeah, I am excited to see how that unfolds for sure. Let's see. Saka came off. Exactly. I was like, I think he did come off. Michael said that 4-minute spell where he brought on Zinni and Georgie was class. Might be one of my favorite parts of the match. I agree. Hightower says the way Zinni gave us control was class. I agree. Boy says the man defended like Trojans. I love a 1-0, a stinky, dirty 1-0 where you have to like just grind it out. Like, I think that you need those at times. And I like that. I feel like our team loves to win those types of games. And so we know how Arteta is. Like, it's not just about pretty football. I think we can grind out a win if we have to. And until the attack starts really getting going, as long as we don't give up a lot of goals, we'll win most games. Like, sometimes you only need 1 or 2 goals. Last season, one of our issues was we needed to score 3 or 4 in order to win the game because we were going to concede 2 or 3. So, I'm okay with us maybe, being better defensively because that was a big issue last season for sure. There's 200 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Boy says Jorginho calmed everything down towards the end of the game. Experience, good technical quality. I mean, he really is a good, like, we have some players that you don't necessarily want them for 90 minutes, but you definitely need them for certain like game states. And Jorginho, Tomiyasu, them two in particular, I do think suit certain game states really, really well and give us a different look and help us manage certain circumstances. So I love that. Let's see. Don One says, come on, you Gunners. I love that. So obviously, like, I love that win. And, Declan Rice was absolutely amazing. Man of the match. I mean, he was outstanding. We already talked about White. We talked about Saliba. The attack wasn't necessarily attacking the way that we wanted it to, but I think we kind of know why. I think Gabriel Jesus is going to really change things for us, for sure. So we have that to look forward to. But the discourse around Kai Havertz, I do find to be really interesting. And the reason why is because I always feel like when people, I think, overdo it, it's because they're trying to compensate for some sort of insecurity. And I try to figure out what that is. And so yesterday, I saw lots of people, big accounts, putting out these long threads and long paragraphs about how great Kai Havertz played in the game against Palace. And I found that strange because I thought he was just okay. And to be honest, in all the games that he's played for us, except for maybe Barcelona, I think he's been just okay. I think he's been fine. Not bad, not horrendous, not great either. Fine. Okay. You know? So I found it strange that people were like going out on a limb, putting out these long dissertations about, you know, him being so great, right? And I think to me, like, it feels like people want the signing to work really badly. And we should, because if it doesn't, it looks really bad because Havertz is not a player that we needed to buy. Um, a team that could probably use another midfielder and another attacker spent 70 million on a player that's kind of neither and needs some rehabilitation because he's been at a club that didn't know how to use him. And so it was a risk that we didn't need to take. So it needs to work out for sure. So I understand why people really want to like make it work, you know, but he was just all right, y'all. Like, he was just all right. I know he won all of his duels. He won all the duels. Like, I get that. And almost all of them were headers. And he adds something a little bit different. But I don't think we need to overdo it. I really, really don't. Because I had somebody tell me that he was excellent and he won his duels and he pressed well. So what more do you want? And I'm like, yeah, no, I want more than that. Like, I want more than that. I expect much more than that, and that's also because I think he's a very like, I think he's a quality player that can offer us a lot, but pressing and winning your duels, for me, is a bare minimum requirement for Arsenal Football Club. It's not necessarily anything to, like, like my attacking mids, I want them to influence the game. I want them to get onto the ball. I want them to score goals. I want them to get assists. Now, he was robbed of an assist. I will say that for sure. But I think overall, I leave the Palace game and the Nottingham Forest game feeling like Kai Havertz has been fine, okay. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't need to put extra mayonnaise on it. Don't need to overdo it. And I don't know why people are going to this extent, but I get it because rivals are bantering us and, Chelsea fans are doing the 007 shit and all that kind of stuff. But in reality, like, I think I cannot see a world where anybody would have thought that that was an excellent performance, considering the performance that we saw from Saliba and Rice and White and Thomas Partey as well. It was interesting to see people go out on a limb for that. And I think the funniest narrative that came out of yesterday was, if you don't, like, basically, like, you don't understand football if you don't think that Kai Havertz was excellent yesterday. And for me, it's just like, you're doing the most. Like, you really are. Like, people, it's like if you're a neutral and a casual fan, then you won't get it. But if you're a real, like, connoisseur and scholar of the game, you'll be able to understand what he did. Get out of here. Like, stop overdoing it. Like, we'll know when Kai Havertz has had an excellent game because we won't have to rewatch it and write threads about it. I get that. So one of his biggest strengths is the way that he opens up space. He opens up space for others. He finds space. I get that. I get that he adds a little bit of an aerial threat. I get that as well. Like, I'm not a dummy. Like, I'm not a dummy. I know what he adds. But it is a stretch to say that Kai Havertz was excellent in that game, or that was some sort of performance that needed or required or some level of praise. I thought, like, he was just all right. He really, really was. And I just think people are doing the most, like, to the point where you're saying that, well, you don't understand the game if you don't, like, get out of here. Like, you're doing the absolute most. He was all right. He cost us almost 70 million and he's on 200,000 pounds per week and he's an attacking midfielder. And people, oh, well, if you're expecting goals and assists, then you won't ever be happy with Havertz. And I'm just like, so we don't expect goals and assists from this guy? What are we saying? We're not even speaking about football in normal terms anymore. An attacking mid is going to be expected to score goals and assists, despite opening up space for others, winning aerial duels, and pressing well. You want goals and assists. And at some point, he's going to have to offer those. Now, he doesn't have to offer those just right now because I think he's going to take more time. like he's going to take more time, and quite frankly, I don't think he's going to really shine at all until Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko on the side. So I'm not putting that much pressure on him. Like, I just don't think this is the setup for him at the moment. But like, why are we acting like this is all we expect from this player? He is a quality player. If you watch him at Bayer Leverkusen, it wasn't just opening up space. The guy was scoring goals and getting assists, so I just found it very funny how people were kind of just like going over the effing top and going into these like soliloquies. Oh, well, you just don't understand the game, and you're just a neutral or a casual if, you don't understand what he does. Like, be fucking for real. Okay? Like, this is crazy. He was not bad, but he also was not excellent. Like, come on. Iman says, we keep praising the bare minimum for Havertz with these off the ball stats. How about more quality on the ball? Yeah, I think you can have very good, like, one of Haaland's biggest qualities is his runs. That's one of his biggest qualities, is he knows where to be on the pitch. Like, he does. Like, he knows when to arrive, how to arrive. He can sniff out where the ball is going to be. And so movement is one of his biggest qualities. But just getting into the spots and kicking over the bar is not good enough. Like, it would not matter if he was not scoring goals. And I just think that, like, we have very low expectations for players, and I get that we want the bar to be very low so that we can make sure that he doesn't fail. But the reality is like, we'll know when he has an excellent performance, guys. It'll be so obvious because Rice had an excellent performance, and I didn't need a rewatch. I didn't need a thread. I didn't need some guy talking to me, telling me about how I don't understand the game, because it was just obvious. And I think a player that's having a really good game, even casuals can see it. My dad came to the Community Shield game. He also was at the Nottingham Forest game. And he said, this guy doesn't watch Arsenal at all. But he said that Rice guy is a super athlete, and he stops all these counterattacks and stuff like that. Like, he's great. And he also said that we would lose every game if we didn't have Odegaard on the pitch. And when we talk about casual, I'm talking about casual. Like, the guy doesn't. So I do think that, like, at a certain point, like, if players are playing well, people that are not tacticos will know it. And I think if you have to go into the depths of threads and really show, like, the movement, and if this had happened, this would have happened, you're forcing it. I think you're forcing it a little bit. And we don't have to, because he's coming along nicely. He doesn't really have the tools around him to really unlock him. So we don't have to force it. So I don't know why we're doing it. Don't let Chelsea fans make you force shit. Like, who cares? They're going to do 007 no matter what. Doesn't matter. Art says the left side of our team hasn't played together before. Nelly, Havertz, Rice, and Tommy, all new combinations compared to Saka, Owen, White. I agree. Ivy says, thank you, Jess. I'm glad you're pointing this out. People just need to be honest. I watched him and felt like he was okay. I felt like he was okay. And if you genuinely feel like he was excellent, fair enough. But I know how football Twitter works, and I get how this fan base works. The narrative is built and people follow it because big accounts are saying it, and big accounts do it for a certain reason. And I feel like the reason is because we know that this man cannot fail. Boy says Havertz was good though, no force. I think people just don't like his face. I don't think it's about his face. I think it's just like, here's the thing. It's when you bring players into the team, bring players into the squad, Havertz has started off at basically like a negative. Like, he started off at, like, not for me personally, like, for me, he got a clean slate. But for a lot of Arsenal fans, like, he's starting at like a negative 100. Like, he played at Chelsea. He wasn't great there. He cost a lot. And they also will say, like, like, Vieira has a little bit of this, like, because we could have gotten Paqueta or somebody instead. There's also that additional tax of you could have been so-and-so instead, right? So I think Havertz is just starting off at like a very low point for like a lot of Arsenal fans, like negative. So it's going to take a lot more to even get him to a point where people are going to see him clearly. And so I don't necessarily feel like that's the average Arsenal fan's fault. I think it's normal to not want players that have played poorly for your rivals. And this like high and mighty kind of like you just have to give them a clean slate. Yeah, like we want everybody to give them a clean slate, but some people just aren't. And so we didn't, and again, we didn't have to bring in Havertz. He's not a player that like any of us really thought we needed before the window started, So I think it's just we have to accept that there's going to be time that needs to like time and really good performances in order to bring people around. And criticizing him and not thinking that he played well is not a crime. It's not abuse to say that you didn't think he played well. And I think we blur that line quite often. And I get why. It's because, players have been abused and it's been painful and not great to watch. But like the idea that like everybody just needs to give him a clean slate, I think is unrealistic when football is naturally tribalistic. You don't want players from your rivals that didn't do well. It just is what it is. Let's see. Unknown says we just don't understand football anymore. Biscotti says, I'd much rather have Trossard over Havertz. I feel like Arteta is playing him because of his physical advantage. Yeah, I think Arteta just genuinely likes Havertz, and also like he put his neck out for him. So it's like you have to play him, like, you know. I would prefer Trossard in several different positions. I think it's strange that Trossard is not playing. I think he's probably our most informed and best attacker right now. And so it's for me, like, it doesn't make sense for him not to be playing, but I also don't expect him to play because I know how Arteta works. So yeah. Elliot Roberts says Havertz floats like an Ozo butterfly, but when will he sting like a bee? I don't know. Aman says, hopefully when Zinni and Jesus come back in the team, he can start seeing a better Havertz. For now, he's been okay. Don One says, do you think Havertz needs to go on a confidence course? I do. I don't know if I feel like he's lacking confidence or what I feel like. I think I'm just seeing a player that's just kind of like trying to learn our system and stuff like that. I would imagine that he doesn't have high confidence because it's 3 years like at a place like and you haven't played well and you haven't played in your right position and fans hate you. Like that's gotta suck, But at a certain point, like you just have to perform and he's doing all right now, and hopefully with more playing time and different players around him, he'll really go to the next level, you know. I think he will. Like, I think he will. Like, that's the thing. It's like, I actually don't worry about it that much. Like, I do stand firm on the fact that it has to work out. And if it doesn't, like, it's on Arteta, like, you know. But I think it will work when the right players are in there. Like, I do. So, but like it will when it does, and it'll be obvious when it does. Abraham says we got robbed by Chelsea. 65 million was a lot for Havertz. Abraham says Havertz is not poor, but not good enough for that price tag. Fair enough. Coach Dave says my stance is same and has been all these years before he got here. He's overrated, and this fan base is just weird. Javi Simmons should have been the guy for half the price. Kid's a star. Iman says we don't understand football, Jess. I just thought that was hilarious. Like I was literally laughing so hard last night because I was just like, is that what we're doing now? It's you just don't understand football if you don't get it. Like, no, it's just people want more and like they expect more for the price tag, for the quality of the player, for that position. You expect more. Like it's just not that deep. So yeah. I'll name this account later. Says, which account are you talking about, Jess? It's all of them. It's obvious. Like the accounts, like they do it all the time. Like they get a narrative and they run with it. It's a lot of different accounts. And I get why they're doing it. They really want it to work out. I've also seen them say like, he needs a lot of love and care. Like he really needs a lot of like encouragement. And I think it just comes from wanting the signing to work out so bad that you want, if he were to look online, to feel like the fans think he's doing a good job. I understand that. But I feel like we're not giving Havertz enough credit. He's grown up, he's been playing, he has a lot of experience. And so, I don't think we need to baby him that much where we need to be out there writing paragraphs about how great he was when he was just okay. Andre Zachary says Havertz is solid. I cannot slate him for his performances. And again, I never slated him. Like, I think he's just been okay. It's just that simple. Some people are slating him though and saying he's crap and awful and all this kind of stuff. And I actually don't think that that's the case either. Like, I think people that are going the other direction as well and saying that he's horrendous and he's this and that. Like, I don't actually think it's that. I think it's just somewhere in the middle. And we have a hard time getting to a middle. Everything is very black and white sometimes with the fan base. Let's see. Martin says, be positive. At least we didn't get Mount. Oh, man. Well, I rate Mason Mount. Always have. So, I would have preferred him, I think, to Kai Havertz. But he's going to suffer at Manchester United. They continue to play him in that position. That's not he and Bruno play the same position. And so you can only have one of them in your midfield at once, especially with Casemiro. So, the balance is off in that midfield and he will continue to look poor if they continue to do that. Like, that's just what it is. So Blaze says, Jess, you don't understand football. Havertz was excellent yesterday. Fair enough. Saida says, hey, Jess, off topic, but I wanted to know where you get your Arsenal tickets from. You can DM me on Twitter and I'll tell you where I get my tickets from. If you follow me on Twitter or Instagram, just DM me on there and I'll tell you where I get my tickets from. Holdini Gunnar Legend says, we need to make use of our squad for F's sake. Can we just relax? If we play Trossard and get injured, we'll be crying. We need to make use of our squad as a whole. I think the issue with the Trossard thing is just like, it's obvious to play him when Gabriel Jesus is not there. So, it's not making use of your squad when I think you're a little off here. Like, I think this, because people were saying like, well, the reason why Trossard is not playing is because he's better at finishing games and Eddie's better at starting them. No, it's Eddie is not good at coming off the bench. Trossard is good when he starts or he comes in because he's just a really good player. So the idea that like Trossard is just a better finisher like of the game, that's not true. Trossard, when he starts games, he's excellent. When he comes in off the bench, he's excellent. Why? Because he's just good. So I don't know why Eddie continuously starts over Trossard. It doesn't make sense to me, but I don't think it's about using the squad. I think there's something in it. And all managers have favorites, and Arteta's no different. And I don't shade him for it because I know every manager has favorites. Arsene had favorites. Everybody has favorites. And I think Eddie is just somebody that Arteta really likes. And his feelings on him is like, if Gabriel Jesus is out, Eddie starts, period, And that doesn't open up the opportunity for Trossard to play through the middle, even though I think that that's just a naturally like a better fit. But that's just me, But I don't think it's about using the squad. I think Arsenal fans that want Trossard to play games make a lot of sense. He was our most informed, attacker during preseason. He's most similar to Gabriel Jesus playing through the middle. He scores goals, he gets assists. It makes sense why we would want him to play. Boy says, feels like Havertz is under a different yardstick because he's actually being played in midfield and was the Xhaka replacement. Also, Partey being pushed out of midfield. There's a lot of different factors to it. I think, it feels like we're trying to shoehorn him in or trying to create an environment where he can play midfield without actually having to play midfield, if that makes sense, because Thomas Partey is actually doing a lot of the midfielding in there, which is not dissimilar to Zinchenko doing it, but it feels a little bit different because Thomas Partey is being moved out instead of Zinchenko, who's a left back. So it's just a lot of different layers to it. And I think just ultimately, like, Havertz is going to have a hard time getting a certain part of the fan base to really love him because of where he came from and how he performed there. And then just until it starts looking like it's really working and it's obvious to the casual eye, it's just going to take a little bit, It is what it is. Art says, I think sometimes he plays them consistently because he sees what they do in training. Some of Eddie's dribbling yesterday was different. I didn't expect that from him. Fair enough. And Arteta takes training very, very seriously. And we know that. And so we don't get to see what's in training. Maybe Trossard's not training as well as Eddie. Eddie, I think, probably trains harder than anybody else. I believe that, so. And again, going back to the beginning for people that are just coming, like, I think Eddie had an excellent game yesterday, despite not finishing his chances. I thought if he had finished just one of those chances, that would have been the best he ever played for Arsenal. So, it's not that I dislike him or that I don't think he played well. I just think other choices are better because they unlock different players. Cal says, I like Havertz' physicality, though. We have tall players in the team now. Can't be bullied. Somebody said like 8 out of the 10 players that finished the game against Crystal Palace were all 6 foot plus. Was the last time we saw that from an Arsenal team since like the Invincibles. Like, we've been small for a long time. So I do like that we're a lot bigger. Unknown says, we're in the era of inverted strikers and space attackers. Soon we'll have inverted goalies. Dale says, maybe topic for next show, but do we need another defender? Depth is still dependent on being mostly injury-free. Transfer window closes in 10 days. We absolutely need another defender. I'll say that for sure. And I like the look of Guéhi yesterday. I know that he'd be expensive, but I just cannot imagine a world where we potentially let Tierney go and we just go with what we have. Because Timber was meant to, he really covered every single position for us, and not having him makes it feel like we have the same exact depth. I imagine Rob Holding will go. So no Rob Holding, no Timber, no Tierney. That leaves us very threadbare back there, in my opinion. So, yeah, somebody definitely needs to come in, somebody with some that can cover multiple positions back there, but it has to be a player of quality. So, that is tough. It's tough. I'm glad I'm not Edu having to figure that out, because with 10 days left and we still need to sell Balogun, there's still a lot of things that need to happen. I mean, it's Tuesday afternoon and we haven't really seen any outgoings, and we know that outgoings are the key for anybody coming in. So yeah, it's not looking good. Aman says, the best I've seen Havertz is against Barca in preseason. I'm going to give Havertz time, but we shouldn't overgas the most simple things. And he played well because he played with Trossard and Gabriel Jesus. It's just that simple. Our defense was pretty much as similar as, we played White and Gabriel and Saliba, and Timber played on the left. Thomas Partey played at the 6, and it was Havertz and Odegaard. And then Trossard played left wing, and I think Gabriel Jesus played through the middle. And yeah, that was the best that Havertz played, and it makes sense because he had that interchangeability on those sides and through the middle, and we just haven't seen it since, and it's not a surprise because he hasn't played with Gabriel Jesus. So yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna get out of here soon. Denver says, how long is Timber even out for the whole season? I would imagine he's out for the entire season. Don One says, Jess, I said Arsenal should start slow this season, and that's the case. I think we are pacing ourselves for a long season, unlike last year when we ran out of steam. That's another reason why I think people are just panicking. It's because we don't look as ready as we did at last season. We were as good as we were going to be in preseason. That's the thing. It's when we were in preseason last season, that was as good as we were going to be. And that was excellent. And then this season, we came into preseason, we were a little bit we weren't as good. And I think that made people worry about are we as ready? And I think what I like that I've seen so far is that I don't think we're anywhere near as good as we can be. I think we can still reach those heights, but we're in second gear right now. And we're winning games comfortably, I still think. I know we went down to 10 men, but I thought before that, it was a pretty comfortable game, I don't think we're stressing ourselves out. And so I do think we peaked quite early last season, and so we need to peak at the right time. And no, we're not quite at the same level as Man City were, even when they're they're walking around, they can beat up somebody 3-0. But I also think we're missing some really key players in Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko. So once they come back, I do expect us to look a lot more like us. Actually, when Zinchenko comes back, I think we'll look a lot better in general. But we're adding new players in and we're still winning games. And I think other teams can't really say that. They're not at their best, but they're losing, So I'm okay with it. I'm actually overall happy with what I've seen, and I'm okay. You know, especially since yesterday's game, I thought, especially in the first half, we were better than we were against Forest. And I saw especially Rice coming out of his shell, which is super important. Like, I don't want it to take him so long to get off the mark. Like for a DM, I'm not expecting like a lot of goals. And really, he was robbed of a assist yesterday, So I love that Rice is starting to look like the player that we bought, and that's super important, I think. Yeah. Let's see. Demidio says, unpopular opinion, Arsenal are better off not signing Kai Havertz. Not transfer news. No. Denver says, I wouldn't mind Cancelo for a season on loan, to be honest, but City ain't doing no business with us. He's also very close to signing for Barcelona, and I think that's where he wants to go. So I don't think we even have a chance, to get him. So yeah, Ivy says the players have been a bit chill getting the 3 points, but I'm worried that we're not creating enough chances. We're not creating enough chances, but we know why we're not creating as many chances, and that'll come when certain guys are in the team. Like, I think it's just that clear. But, we're still winning despite that, and I think we'd feel a little bit differently if Eddie had maybe finished one of those chances, two of those chances. We would be 2-0 up, and it would be fine, So we'll see. Don one says, Jess, have you spoken about Tommy's double yellow? I missed that at the start. Yes, I did speak about that. I would just go back to that part in the show and look at it. But basically what I said, it was bullshit. It was crap. Tawanda says some fans overreacting. To be honest, Havertz is good. I think he's a quality player. He's a good player. He can add so much, but I think he's just been all right so far. But yeah, some people are going over the top, saying that, he's the worst player and he's this and that. He hasn't been the worst player, and he's actually been, at least out of possession defensively and stuff like that, been better than I think I expected him to be. So let's see how it unfolds. Let's see how it unfolds. Bailey says, loved how we finished off the match without Rob Holding and Hail Mary. Oh, we didn't get the what is it, the 5 whatever 4-1 whatever with him. Yeah, I don't want to go in on Rob Holding because it's not necessary, right? We all know that he's not. Yeah. Hopefully somebody is interested in Robert. That's it. Boy says, we haven't clicked and we're winning. When we click, we are going to be dynamite and haven't seen our best selection. I agree. So, I mean, 6 points for me, like, that's fine because we have like one more game at home against Fulham that we should be winning, and then we have our first like huge test against Manchester United. So if we get those 3 points, I think we'll be in a good place. And Fulham don't look great, so this would be a nice game to get 3 goals, and a clean sheet, like something like that, to really like underpin some of the things that we've seen. But ultimately, I'm happy about what I'm seeing. I think the team looks a lot more well-rounded in terms of we can mix some things up and still win games, because last season, like, it felt like if any piece of that starting 11 was not there, we were in trouble. This season, we can see that, like, okay, without Zinchenko, we can still win games. Like, without having Gabriel in, we can still be okay at the back, and those things are important. So, I've not much to really complain about, because you guys know I'll start complaining if I really am like, what the hell? But, and this was not complaining today. So for people that are like, oh, you're complaining, this is not complaining. You have seen nothing yet. But ultimately, happy, happy. So for the next like 10 minutes or so, if you guys want to do Q&A, that would be fun. Want to do a little bit of a longer show because why not? You know, we haven't spoken in a while. So you guys want to get in the chat and send over some questions, I would love to answer them. So yeah, I'll give you guys kind of like a minute to do it. Get them in there. So yeah. Oh, the question. Unknown C says, how down were you when you saw Timber go down? I have to be honest, like, I was actually embarrassed about how sad I was. I'm still not quite over it yet. Like, yeah, because I was at the game and I knew as soon as it happened, I was like, that's definitely an ACL or something serious because he just went down out of nowhere after halftime. And I was just devastated, you know, because you could just feel it. And then when it was confirmed, it just kind of sucked the joy out of it. Was already, I think, difficult to kind of like had hangover from last season and the failed title challenge. So there's like a hangover there. And, you know, we didn't look great in preseason. And then, you know, Timber was kind of like the one player that had like as a transfer that like came in and hit the ground running. I was so excited to watch him play. And then for that to happen, first game of the season, first half, like he gets his dream move and then boom, he's out for the entire season. It's just, it took me like, honestly, like for days, I was just devastated. Like I just, any like seeing pictures of him, anything. And then when like the new advert came out for like the new third kit came out and he was on it, I was just like, I just can't. Like, and I shouldn't be that like devastated. He does not know me. I do not know him. But Timber is such a good player, and I was so excited to watch him play for us. Like, I am still devastated about it, I really am. So, yeah, I'm not dealing with it well, I have to be honest with you. It really took some of the joy out of the season for me, I have to be honest with you. Blaze says, Jess, do you think Trossard will play more Champions League more than PL this season? Maybe. You know, he was on the, like, advertisement thing for Champions League. He was holding up the Champions League ball, and so maybe they're gonna play him more for Champions League. We need to play Trossard. Like, I'm gonna keep saying it just because, like, I just think, like, that's a player that could do a lot for us, and I don't wanna waste it, you know? So, he may play more in Champions League, you know, I think he's one of those types of players where we don't really lose anything, like, there's no drop off there, he's like a starting level player. I felt very similar about him that I felt about Timber. That is the type of strength and depth that we're talking about where there's no drop off really. And so, you know, I think he probably will play some more Champions League for us. But we'll see because so far it looks like he's playing a bit part role and yeah, I'm not happy about it. I have to be honest with you. Let's see. Elliot Roberts says, is United a huge test these days? Really? It's not really like a test. It's just more of like kind of like our big game because of rivalry and because they're always trying to make a statement. You know how it is. And they actually have players that could hurt you if you're not defending properly. So yeah, like, but I get what you're trying to say. So yeah. Toney says, should we sell Balogun to Chelsea? Oh, what a question. What a question. What a question. He could end up there, you know. And you know, I was like, what happens if Tottenham and Chelsea are the only teams there on deadline day? Then what do we do? But Chelsea are interested in Balogun. I could definitely see Balogun going there. He doesn't give a shit about us. You know, so I would say yes, but for more than what we would sell him normally. Like, I would actually be really disappointed if we sold him to Chelsea for 50 million because they have tons of money and they're our rivals, and so we shouldn't just be like giving them players, you know. But because we're struggling to sell him, I do feel like, or to get our valuation, I do feel like it's a very real possibility that he could end up there. But I am hoping that Fulham or Monaco can scrape together their little coins, because I just am not interested in seeing Balogun score goals for Chelsea and having to do that every week. Did we make a mistake? Did we make a mistake? So I would say yes, but only for like 65, 70 million, like whatever Man United got for Hoyland, or gave for Hoyland to Atalanta. But yeah, it's a sticky one. It really is. I wouldn't sell him to Spurs because, there are rivals, but yeah. He could end up there. Crispy says, what are your thoughts on Toney links? The links are pretty fabricated, aren't they? It's more from him just on the interview saying that, he's always liked Arsenal and the way Arsenal play. But, watching the interview, one thing that stuck out to me about Toney was that I do think that from a story standpoint, he does fit quite similarly to a lot of our players. Arteta seems to like players that have had to really grind to get where they are. We have like Rice and Ben White, Martinelli, a couple of others too, that Ramsdale, that have come from like lower leagues or, been faced with a lot of rejection and have worked really hard to get where they are. And Toney is no different than that. You listen to his story, like he was rejected a lot. And he finally got his chance in the Premier League, and he is taking it, like he really is. And so I think from a story standpoint, he does fit, the players that we have. From a playing standpoint, I think you're looking for somebody that gives you a little bit more of a physical presence and that true center forward ability, like it's going to score you 20, 25 goals a season, but also is going to give you the link up play and the creativity through the middle, then he really stands out as a good option. He also is a dead ball specialist and a really good penalty taker. And I told you guys earlier that I feel like that's something that we're sorely missing in this team. I think you need a number 9 that you feel confident is going to make the penalties. And if you've seen him on dead balls, he's really good. And we just don't have anybody that from a dead ball situation is going to put it in the back of the net. And so my thoughts on the links are that there are no links, and it's just, him saying that he likes Arsenal and stuff like that. But, looking at the number 9 options like an Evan Ferguson or Osimhen, Toney, I think he fits what I think Arteta would like, but, we'll see. We'll see. Nikki says, what other team has impressed you so far? Obviously Brighton. They've been excellent so far. And that's it. Like, I think everybody else has looked what they've looked like. They've had bits and pieces of good points, bits and pieces of bad points. Like Newcastle was really good on the first game of the season, but against Aston Villa, but they were like okay against Manchester City. And then Aston Villa obviously they got pumped by Newcastle, but they looked really good against Everton, but Everton are really bad, so it's hard to tell so early on. But I think the only team that's looked like, wow, they look really good is Brighton. And they were already impressive as it is. So, yeah. Blaze says, oh, yeah, you already answered that one. Z says, good evening, Jess. Are you worried about Arsenal's performances? No, I'm not. I think, they're obviously not perfect, but I remember we were really good last season. And at the very beginning, and a lot of people were saying, well, you guys are going to peak. You guys have nowhere to go. Now that we are not looking exactly like how we want to look, but we're winning, now you're not perfect from the beginning. No, I'm not worried about our performances. I'm eager to see Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko back in the team. I think that unlocks everybody else. Defensively, we've looked very good, in my opinion. And, some of our signings, especially like Declan Rice, has really started to look the way that like £100 million signing. So no, I'm not worried about our performances. Andre says, do you see us doing a surprise offloading of ESR for a marquee signing in the close of the window? No, I don't see, I don't see ESR being somebody that's offloaded. I'd be surprised by that. I think it's gonna be, Tierney, Nuno, Sambi, Balogun, that go. And like Rob Holding, but I don't see any surprises at this point. I'd be surprised if anybody offered us like big money for ESR right now. He's just been injured for so long, so not ESR, I don't think. But what I will say is I do think we're missing a midfield, and if I had to like condense things a little, I think we have one too many DMs and one too many number 10s. Do you know what I mean? Like we have ESR, Havertz, and Vieira, and Odegaard. We have Jorginho and Thomas Partey and Rice. And there's nobody really in that middle category of just like a box-to-box center midfielder that kind of like, you know what I mean? And so I would love to get that player in, but I just have a hard time like thinking that that's going to happen this late in the window. So we'll see what happens, but not ESR. I think he'll stay at this point. Denver says, do you feel the player profiling in regards to height and physicality is part of the next phase to win second balls and add rigidity? Yes. Arteta's no fool. He knows that in the Premier League, you need to have athletes. And I think he's willing to sacrifice a little bit of maybe, the tiki-taka stuff in order to be more physical and have more presence. There was a long time under Arsene where I thought he valued technical ability a little bit too much and didn't add those pieces in there, especially in the like spine of our team in defense and in midfield. And I think Arteta has learned from that. He's learned from his like early years at Arsenal. And so we're adding more of that in order to be able to compete. And I'm loving every minute of it because I don't like the small teams like that don't do it. Like you need to have big, strong players that are physically imposing. Like they still have to be able to play ball. But when you look at our players like Saliba and Ben White, even like Tomiyasu and Gabriel, they're not the best on the ball, but they're not like big lumps. Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think Arteta's learning, that Arteta, like Arsenal need to be able to go to, Newcastle and Liverpool and Man United and really compete. And the way that you do that is you have to be able to play the physical game as well. You can't just be tiki-taka. But I've never really seen that from Arteta either. Like I haven't seen him really focus on like bringing in super small players. So yeah, we'll see. Except for Vieira. Vieira. Oh man. Let's see. Team One says, Jess, you just know you're always been a fan of Livramento. Are you excited to see him in a Newcastle shirt? No. I'm not excited to see good players somewhere else. No, I'm interested to see how he's going to develop after his ACL because he hasn't really played that much football. So it'll be interesting to see how he looks. But I think Newcastle have had a really good window in terms of their recruitment. They brought in that Lewis Hall, who I think is like very good player, Livramento, and then also Tonali and Harvey Barnes. That's a very good window. A very good window. I'm sure they would have wanted to bring in a center back, but that's a very good window for Newcastle. And so it'll be interesting to see, but like, I'm not excited. Not excited. Let's see. Blaze says Monaco also want Balogun. Yes, they do. Let's see what you guys saying. Martin N says, which team do you want to see in our UCL group? What I will say is a team that I want to avoid is Bayern, and a team that I want to play is Barcelona. Like, in terms of like, I don't really want to play Bayern. And the only reason why is just because like, I just don't need Kane knocking us out. Like, I just feel like that would be so painful. And so I want to avoid Bayern. I think by the time we get to the Champions League, they will have clicked fully with him as well. I would love to play Barcelona. After preseason, I want it. I want to meet up with Barcelona at some point. It'll be interesting to see us play like Napoli as well, for the vibes, So those are teams that I want to play. Hope that answers a little bit of your question. Art says, what role do you see for ESR and Pepe now that he's staying? For ESR, I really don't know. I have a hard time seeing where he's going to gain some playing time, maybe in cups. But one thing about Kai Havertz that, ESR, I think he struggles with in that position is off the ball. And as you guys have already said, Kai Havertz pressing, blocking passing lanes, getting back, things like that. He's quite good at, and I find ESR is not quite as good at that. And so I wonder if that's a reason why maybe Arteta doesn't trust him as much in that midfield position. And then now that we have like Nelson and Trossard, I don't necessarily see left wing as somewhere that he would play either. And Vieira is definitely the number one choice for Odegaard's backup. So I really struggle to see where ESR's playing time is going to come from. And even though I don't sense a sale, I do think, I don't know. I'm not sure that he'll be here that long unless something really changes. Pepe, I still think he'll go. I think this is all BS. And they gave his number away. I don't think he's gonna stay. So yeah, but if he were to stay, he would just be a backup. And I'd actually be surprised if he ever made the team. We're gonna have 25 players in the squad, and if we have like one or two stragglers, Pepe would be one of those not making the team. So yeah. Stefan says, do you think Havertz has done well? Then that he's been playing from midfield, a position he's not really played for. I think he's done okay. Like, I think he's been fine. Like, I'm not gonna like over egg it. Like, I genuinely feel in my head that like when I've watched him play, I think he's been okay. Not bad, but not way better, Yeah, I think he's been okay. Off the ball, I think he's been better than I thought he would be, which is good because, to play in midfield, you have to be able to, not necessarily be a defender, but, be good out of possession. And he's been good at that. I'm looking for way more than what we've seen, though, and that's just the truth. Let's see. Couple more. Tony K says, hopefully we get Inter Milan. It's always a special occasion at home, as there are a lot of Italians in North London. Fair enough. Nate says, do you think Fulham or Sheffield United could get a result against Man City without Pep? No. No. I get that, like, sometimes the manager not being on the touchline makes a big difference, but I just feel like it would have to be something like they'd have to be playing like a top team. I don't think they'll be able to get a result against Man City, but I'll be hoping for it. I'll be hoping for it. I was telling Terry that like he needs to get better at hate watching. I don't think he hate watches good enough. Like, I feel like I made that Chelsea result happen. I feel like I made it happen because while I was watching, I was kicking every ball for West Ham. I was really willing them on, I was doing my job. And hate watching is a sport, It really is. I'm one of the best like at hate watching. When I hate watch, things happen. Martin N says, Jess, I guess Santi is not your type of player. Well, so here's where we go to like the extremes, right? Is I don't like the small team. I don't want the entire team to be small. But if there's small players intertwined, like again, Odegaard, he's one of my favorite players. He's not the biggest. So obviously I don't have an issue with some players not being big and physical, but to not have any in your team or down your spine is suicidal in the Premier League. And so Santi actually was one of my favorite players. He's number 19. That's a very special number to me. He is a very special player. So just because I don't love having a small team doesn't mean that I don't have love for small players, so yeah. Boy says, who do we sign with Balogun money? This is a good question. This is a good question because I know we see that Kudus's stuff has been like they tried to close the deal with Brighton, it didn't work. Trying to close the deal with West Ham didn't work. And I just wonder if we could jump in there last minute and get him. I think he'd be the perfect signing because you kill two birds with one stone. He can play right wing. You know, he's a left-footed right winger type. But he also can play attacking mid. And I do think we need a different type of player there too, with a little bit more of like, you know, somebody a little bit with a little bit more physicality. Not even just physicality, because I don't want to be like act like he's just like a lump, but he's somebody that can come deep, receive the ball, progress it. I think he does some of like the stuff that like a Kovacic would do. You know, he can receive the ball, progress it. He doesn't get the ball taken off of him, but he scores goals. He has a crazy shot on him as well. And I just feel like to kill two birds with one stone for a team that probably needs an attacker and another midfielder, to be able to do that with one player would probably be really beneficial for us. And so that is the player that I would go after. I'm not sold on Ansu Fati. I just feel like we don't need another project player that needs confidence and a player that has no ability to stay fit. I don't understand why we'd want him. You know, so I would say Kudus would be the option, but yeah, we'll see. Matt G says, Jess, what do you make of the Tyler Adams situation, having a deal agreed with Chelsea only for them to cancel and completing the medical? That's just how Chelsea are, though. They're quite cutthroat and, you know, they'll do anything. So I think with the Lavia Caicedo situation just became, you know, well, let's just get them all, you know, kind of thing. And so in order for them to get Caicedo, they had to get rid of Tyler Adams. He's at Bournemouth now. He's still injured, so he needs time to like rehab and stuff like that. But I think Bournemouth, you know, with new ownership and a new coach might be a good place for him to be, a nice place for him to land. But I thought it was a little harsh on Tyler Adams to like just cut him loose like that, but that's how Chelsea are. You know how they are, they're cutthroat. So yeah, but oh, Ash, thank you so much for your super chat. Says defensively, very secure since the Community Shield. I agree. You guys know that I thought that our defensive ability has been really good in the last two games. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. We've been on for 2 hours, and it's a very long stream. But I really enjoyed talking to you guys. You guys are my absolute favorites. Game on Saturday, but like obviously we'll cover like transfer rumors and stuff like that tomorrow. To maybe talk about some outgoings and like who needs to go and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully we get some news. But this was so much fun. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, get in the comments after and let me know what you thought. And I will talk to you guys on the next one.